I'll support.
All right. Motion by Stanalacho, support by Chick. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. Move on to the call of the public. If anybody would like from the public to come up and speak, you have 3 minutes. Please state your name and address for the record. All right. Anybody? Okay. There's no public here that wants to speak, so we'll move on to clarifications from commissioners. Anybody want to state anything? Okay. We have no correspondence. We have no public hearings, so we'll move on to the report of the committees. Ms. Chick for the Board of Trustees.
Okay. I sent this out to the Planning Commission this morning. I was on vacation, so I did not go to the last Board of Trustees meeting, but I did have some notes. I watched it. The board met September 9th. The board received a presentation from Mr. Rubel of Tetra Tech regarding the requested wastewater treatment plant capacity report. Since the commissioners are receiving this report tonight, I didn't include notes. There was no action requested or taken on this report. The township manager provided additional information on the sewer upgrade work being done by Dunnigan Brothers. Additional testing is recommended at section Q of the planned sewer work project. This is related to a fuel tank leak at the mobile station at the north end of the township. Depending on the outcome of the planned work in that area, may not be able to be done, but according to Eagle, the area is stable with no movement of contaminants. So we're still waiting to hear from a testing on that. Is that how?
Testing is scheduled to begin in about 3 weeks for as it concerns section Q.
Okay, thank you. A motion to approve a bid from Best Asphalt for $85,819 to pave both community center parking lots, with $50,000 coming from the capital improvement budget and the balance from the general fund. However, the manager is looking into possible use of a older adults millage through the county to cover some of the costs. And that's all I have.
All right, thank you. ZBA, Mr. Zarzeki.
The ZBA has not had a meeting since our last one.
Okay. Staff, anybody would like to say anything? All right. Yes.
This will go out in the manager's report for the board meeting. We had sent maybe 2 weeks ago the certificate of survey for the park project. Staff met yesterday from McKenna, from OHM, as well as the assessor. What we're gonna currently do is make the path from Barker into the park part of parcel A. That eliminates confusion of any future easement discussions, which I know was the concern from members of really the Planning Commission, the board, and Parks and Rec. And so what that will look like moving forward is OHM will redraft with that as part of parcel A, and we will distribute to all three, Parks and Rec, Planning Commission, and the board on the 1st of October with that new sketch for the park. So that's how we addressed it. That will go back out for feedback at that time.
I just want to make a comment too, so that anybody watching this, this is Mr. McDonough. How do you say it?
McDonough.
McDonough, our township manager. He was at our last meeting. I didn't recognize him. I apologize. So I just want to recognize you tonight. Thank you. Thanks for attending.
Absolutely.
And then one other question about what you just said. Is there going to be a new survey done then? Okay, so that has to be then resurveyed.
Correct. And so essentially, I mean, now it's a decision. You've got two sketches. If the board deems it that there needs to be a decision made, it would go back to the board. I don't think the changes are significant enough. We'll kind of see how that goes when we send it out on the 1st with the new survey.
So this is being done before it actually goes to the county to actually make the official split.
Correct.
Okay.
And the deadline for us is December, when it needs to go for the tax rolls for the next calendar year. So that's our suspense to complete this.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you. Planning consultant, yeah, I think we're just gonna move on with that, right? You don't have anything to add on? Okay, all right. Parks and Rec. So I know that we had a discussion at our last meeting about who was going to take over for the Parks and Rec representative. Has that been worked out?
Because we're gonna split, I haven't talked right now. I'm willing to split, I cannot do this. It's been worked out.
All right. Ms. Chick?
So I did speak with Parks and Rec, and the question came up, they do have bylaws. We don't know if it allows for 2 new appointees on the Parks and Rec because it's a 7-member board. So I don't know if there's an option of having a designated member and then an alternate that can fill in when one member's done. And I don't think that question's been answered.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I haven't heard anything. I just was hoping we get something firm from them saying that we can do this.
It's not like both of them are ever gonna be there at one time.
No, we know that. Exactly.
Okay, well, at some point, we have to take some action on that. So if you could end up letting us know by our next meeting, so we can maybe put that on our agenda and make that motion to appoint you two? Okay, great. And land preservation, Mr. Gordon?
The committee has not met since our last board planning commission meeting. There's nothing to report.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to move on to unfinished business, which is master plan update, which actually, it's listed down on here. We're going to, the sanitary sewer issues that Mr. Rubel's going to be presenting tonight is, we're going to roll that into our master plan discussion here. So, Mr. Rubel, if you'd like to make your presentation, please come up. Thank you.
Good evening. I have, not sure how we connect you, okay? Here we go. We had it for a minute there.
There it is. It's up. Oh, it's gone.
Yeah, click share. It is on there.
So I have about 9 slides just to summarize a brief report that accompanies this. Your commission, I think it needs to go by the board of trustees. You look at the capacity of the wastewater treatment plant,
Hey, Ms. Chick.
Yep, I'm getting a notice from our recording secretary that your microphone is not on.
Try it now.
Green, I assume. That's, I think, better? Yeah, okay.
Let me know.
This is a flow diagram of the plant. I'm not going to get real technical tonight unless you ask me to dive into that, but just, I'll go through it real quickly just to describe a few terms that you may hear me use as we go. So starting from upstream to downstream, the wastewater comes into the plant at what we call the headworks, the head of the plant. It's screened, grit is removed at that point. In a wet weather situation, flow at that point would divert to your wet weather storage tank. You know, that's only a fraction of 1% a year where that happens. The rest of the dry weather time, it continues on. It goes to the primary clarifiers. That's a wide spot, a slow-moving part where solid material continues to drop out. Cleaner water continues through. The first place it stops then is, after that, is a trickling filter. That is the original biological process from the 1960s in that plant. Still working, although I think Mr. McDonald would agree with me that it is starting to show its age and present some challenges. In the 70s, the trickling filter was supplemented with what is in this diagram called an aeration process. It's also a biological process. There is bacteria in there. It's a fluid. It's a mixture, and that bacteria does, in fact, consume the wastewater. Then we can remove that. The bacteria make it easier to remove those soluble materials in the water at the secondary clarifiers. Again, another wide spot in the line where the water moves very slowly, and we have an opportunity to drop out more material. After the secondary clarifiers, it goes to the tertiary filter. That is the project that we have just started the construction project on. That will be improved in early 2026. After the tertiary filters, that's really kind of a polishing step. By that point, the wastewater is in pretty good shape, but it is required by the state to continue to remove solid material at the filters. Last step is disinfection, which is currently done by chlorine, like a swimming pool type of disinfection. And then it discharges to the Horseshoe Lake drain. Now, there's also kind of another flow chart to deal with the solid material that we're removing at each of these steps. Largely, that's in good shape. That can accommodate expansion. I did not present much of that process in this report, in this presentation, but there are other processes kind of working behind the scenes as well.
So I'm going to ask you a question. In reading through all of this stuff, this slide to me is an important slide to reference back to, because I know later on you talk about expanding the wastewater treatment plant. So since we have this up here, or if you want to come back to this later, what needs to be expanded? What sections of this would need to be expanded, since we're looking at these as parts? Because the tertiary filters that are being redone. New ones. Yeah,
that's a great question. Yeah, might as well handle that now. I'll talk about additional primary clarifiers. The trickling filter, I foreshadowed that by saying that it's showing its age. We really don't think that putting more money into the trickling filter would be a wise investment at this point. So if you were to expand it, we would just make the aeration process much larger.
So, and when you do this, which one of these processes is going to actually give us the expanded capacity? I mean, in this, or is it a totality?
We need them all because they run in parallel. Well, for instance, the secondary clarifiers, we show 3. In expanded situation, we need 4. And that's the case all the way through. It's not like just one of these we're going to change. We're going to kind of improve everything. Perhaps with the exception of the tertiary filters, which we will have adequate capacity in next year.
Hey, Ms. Chick.
So can I ask, you said you want to do all of it, and I understand that if we want to expand the plant, if we want to expand the plant. Can you do it in phases, or does doing one phase here impact the next phase and it's not going to work right? Or does it have to be done at once, or can it be done in phases?
That's an excellent question. I answered this last week for the Board of Trustees as well. We looked at that back at the office, and it just came out to a situation where many of these processes were going to reach their capacities right about the same time. So it was literally like 50 or 100 REUs difference along the route here. It just didn't seem worth it to do an $8 million project, add 100 homes, and then have to come back and do another many million-dollar project. So I think you're going to realize some economy by scale of doing it all at once. I'm sorry that's the case. I wish we could phase it out, but I'm just not seeing a great opportunity to do that.
Mr. Gordon.
Mr. Rubel, thank you very much. I had a question about the previous slide where you talked about the last major expansion was in 1999 and the development that's taken place subsequent to that, and most recently the new 4 projects that are on in the pipeline were paid for back then. Do you remember what it cost in 1999?
I do not. I do not have those records easily.
Okay. Well, if we don't know what the cost is, how did that get paid? Through tap fees?
Well, typically, completely up to a community to decide how to do that. It's not uncommon that money is borrowed for that, and then the tap fees go back into the utility, either pay for the loan or pay for O&M. But that is how the value is recovered, is through the tap fees.
Okay, so if we're looking at an expansion of $15 to $20 million as yours show, we would need to have enough REUs added over the next 20 years or 25 years to pay for that. But in the meantime, the local residents that are on the sewer would be paying for it until that development showed up?
Again, that's up to the Board of Trustees to decide how to do that. I'm only presenting a way to do it. There might be increment financing or other mechanisms. That is a whole separate discussion.
Thank you.
Any more questions here? I'm happy to, we can come back to it if we need to as
The
well.
only question I had was about the 1999 expansion is do you know what was expanded at that point? Which one of these was expanded, or if you know what they did?
I'm certain a primary clarifier was added, and I believe some aeration capacity, and perhaps the third secondary clarifier.
Okay, but you don't know what it went from, what the capacity was before those improvements to what it is afterwards? You don't know the...
I could estimate that by looking at the records. I did not bring
Okay.
that time series with me today.
Okay.
It was, for instance, your capacity right now is 1.3 MGD. I'm certain that you were slightly below 1 before that expansion. That's the best I can do tonight.
Got it. Ms. Chick?
Yep, so to be clear, and this kind of came up at the board meeting that I listened to, excuse me, but it is in our ordinance that if somebody came in tomorrow and wanted to put in a development or some kind of commercial or industrial, big property, retail, whatever it is, something big, and these kind of improvements were needed now because we can't do anything big today with what we already have in place, then that person or that developer would have to pay for any improvements to the plant. Township would not pay for that.
Clearly, that's a decision the
Ordinance.
Board of Trustees can make. Yep, that's not my place to make that decision.
Mr. Kennedy?
It sounds like what we have right now has been paid for, correct? I mean, in terms of the existing system,
I think your debt service is paid for with the exception of the wet weather storage tank and the money borrowed for the filters.
so all of these new REUs that are going in are generating a tap fee,
Yes.
right? So that could be used to pay down a loan for additional expansion.
That is a decision that many communities make, yes.
Okay.
Or for the existing debt that we have from the tank and the,
That was my
Other
question, is,
improvements.
looking at the math of how much is paid for, how much do we still owe, and how do the tap fees?
I'm getting ahead of my questions here because I was going to wait till the end, but there's one thing. So the 1,100 REUs that we keep talking about, those are just those are proposed right now because those projects haven't broken ground yet, all right? And two of them are only in a preliminary approval stage.
Correct.
So this is, a lot of things can go south, but this is just what it is that we're talking about currently.
That's correct, with perhaps the exception of the first phase of Chestnut, which I
Right.
think is final.
Right, well, I'm not talking about that because that's already
good.
done.
So that's 264. so
Yeah, but we're not talking about out of the 1,100, right?
Yes.
I have included Chestnut in many of these numbers, yes.
Okay, all right. Well, why is that being included when it's already done?
I understood it was partially done, that they were still adding some.
Okay, so those added sections that were approved to go in,
They're still building the homes, the separate units. Those haven't been identified.
I understand, but those have already been kind of accounted for before, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
They're part of the 1,100.
Okay, all right. Fair enough. I just want to make sure that we're talking about that, so.
Well, this was a fairly timely point of time to look at the plant capacity. 1,100 REUs represents about 30% increase in your customer count. That's a very big step, all in a very short period of time. The plant, I mentioned a minute ago, has a capacity of 1.3 MGD. Most of the time, the flows at the plant are well below that. There's a challenging period, many springs, not every spring, but many springs, where the plant does reach 1.3 MGD, and it appears to correlate quite strongly with the elevation of Horseshoe Lake. There is a relationship between elevation of the lake and flows in the sewer, and during many springs, the plant does see 1.3 MGD already. So obviously, Mr. McDonald has been very nervous about adding more REUs, and I think this was helpful to him to see the larger picture of doing that. And the bullet that isn't here is your planning effort. Will give you some input as well, I believe. So.
Let's check.
So the calculations, this report is based on the system that we have right now. It's not, you're not looking at the future upgrades contributing to any kind of elimination of any infiltration in the main line. So I know that we can't do anything about the connections from properties to the main line. That's probably where a lot of infiltration is
I
coming in.
suspect that's true,
Yeah,
yes.
especially around the Horseshoe Lake area. But if we're upgrading the trunk line, the main line, is that going to eliminate some of it? It should.
It should, but I can't quantify that. And I know Mr. McDonald's hopeful that work at the prison, the correctional facility, will also reduce that, but again, we can't quantify that very well.
So she actually asked the question I was going to ask about the new line being put in, if that was going to change that. So I know a long time ago, we talked about people using their sump pumps in order to pump into the sanitary sewer system, which they're not supposed to do that. And is that what you're talking about, the suspect, if this doesn't correct that that's probably what's happening?
Well, infiltration inflow can originate on private property, it can originate on public property. And I've studied this throughout my career. It's not uncommon for 50% or more of it to originate on private property. Whether that be sump pumps, leaky laterals between the home and the street, even yard drains sometimes get connected to the sanitary sewer.
Well, I know a long time ago, there was a talk of putting in a monitoring system to start seeing where the influx is spiking as the lake level rises. So you can start seeing where that is coming in from, because I know we talked about having infiltrate going on, but it's kind of a strange thing that we only have this happen when Horseshoe Lake rises. So I don't know, I know this is not part of this discussion, but it's just something to bring up, because I don't know if that's ever been done.
It's only been done periodically, kind of fits and starts. I did speak to Brian on the way out last week about that, and I know it's a goal of his, perhaps next spring, to go manhole by manhole around Horseshoe Lake and just see if he can observe any changes from one to another. So that's perhaps a movement towards that goal.
Ms. Chick?
So I know we've had, over the last couple of years, questions about an accurate measure of flow from a person, a party. But anyway, so I did a little looking up of information on REUs, and basically, I don't know what figure the Northfield Township used, but the average number of gallons a family of 4 uses equals 1 REU, and that was about 300 gallons, or what number do you use?
Your ordinance calls out to design for 260
Okay.
gallons per day.
Okay.
Perhaps with low-flow toilets and fixtures, we might be a little bit, we're trending downward, not upward with that.
Yeah, so I think it would be really hard to try and figure out exactly what the flow is when you've got one family with 6 kids and one family with no kids. So I get the issue. You're kind of guesstimating a lot, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So when the wastewater treatment plant capacity, 1.3, that million gallons daily?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So we can figure out, because this is one of the things, we're talking REUs and in gallons per day, and just so we can try and, marry that up. So if we take that and divide 1.3 million gallons divided by 260 gallons, that'll give us the REU plant capacity estimated.
Yeah, but you just need to be careful, because during wet weather, it could be more than 260.
I'm just saying based upon what we can guess.
Well, as long as, I don't know the goal for that guess is all. That's.
Well, our ordinance says 260. That's all I'm going by. All right. I understand that.
Yeah.
Realistic things, because I know that in Mr. Jackson's letter, it says 4,500 REUs is the plant capacity approximately. And that's kind of what it is that I estimated 5,000. You divide that by 260. So I'm trying to, so that when we're looking at this, we're talking the same language.
Well, yeah, and I think the rest of the presentation, I'm going to talk about REUs.
Okay.
For the most part, so.
All right, sorry. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. We've kind of talked about this slide a little bit already. The things that are either in development or approved being Chestnut 1 or on the book, so to speak, working their way through the system are tabulated here. They come up to be just over 1,100 REUs, which is a fairly large number. Again, about 30% increase over what you have right now. So the report that accompanies this has a lot of detail about individual processes at the treatment plant and how capacity was calculated. What makes it a little challenging is, and I don't want to go through the detail tonight, is some of the processes are very dependent on peak flows and some are very dependent on average flows. And so it's very difficult to just compare apples and apples with some of these. Sometimes you have to look at peak, sometimes you have to look at average. But what we did here in the first column of numbers is what we think the capacity of each of those are and whether that is based on average or peak flow. The second column then, we have added 1,000 REUs, or in all essence, 1,100 REUs, similar to what I had on the previous slide. And we looked at whether the plant would be able to accommodate that increase. And the Y designation in that column equates to the yes, right? And so we felt pretty good that the plant will be okay, we'll be able to meet the permit requirements with the developments that are working their way through right now. Then we looked at, well, what happens when we go beyond that, perhaps up to 1,500 REU, and unfortunately, you start seeing the letter N appear in a few of those boxes, which equates to no. So things like the influence screen, the primary clarifiers, the biological processes, the trickling filter combined with the aeration, the secondary clarifiers, and even the disinfection system will be overtaxed with 1,500 REUs.
Yeah, Mr. Jackson, turn on your mic, please.
So the first column.
Nobody can hear you. Thanks.
So Brian, the first column is what? What's the first column?
The current
existing
capacity
Okay.
of the process.
Then the second column, middle column there is the current usage plus the projected
That is
development.
correct. That is correct.
What is the third column? What is the 1,000 to 1,500 REUs? What does that represent?
That represents something beyond what is currently on the books, a future level of growth beyond what we have heard about.
So at some point in time, what we'd like to do is plug in that third column, the draft future land use plan.
Yes. Yes.
So it's not just a number at the top, it corresponds to the land use plan. That would be
I think we're talking the same language.
good.
Yep.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Mr. Gordon.
So if I understand, this slide right here relates to your page 15 of your other report. It's
Yep.
the same numbers.
Yep.
So just so I can understand this, right now, with the 4 projects that are in the pipeline, they may not all get built, but I'm sure the developers would like to finish the projects, and they've got their approvals. Those will max out the wastewater treatment plant, but you can meet all the flow necessities in these 8 categories, kind of, except there are 119 units above the 1,000.
Yeah,
that's me.
but part of Chestnut's already, and I don't have that number, part of Chestnut's already connected, so that's why, to me, 1,000 represented a pretty good number to come still.
Okay, but as soon as we try to put in the next development, 5 out of these 8 categories go from yes to no.
That's correct.
So we're maxed out right now.
After these work their way through, yes, I
right.
agree with that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so I guess now's the time to start asking some of the questions I was going to hold off on, but, yeah, go ahead, no, go right ahead.
When you start the expansion, how long would that single-phase expansion take?
I'd say design, construction, 3 years, 2.5 years, something like that.
And out of that time, would there be any time where the current connections will be disabled?
No, we would be able to construct it, keeping the current plant operating, yes.
All right, so,
And that was including the 1,100, should they all be done before you start any phases, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
okay, so here's some questions. You may or may not be able to answer them. You may end up saying, I can't answer that, we need somebody else to do it. So the projects that we're currently in the pipeline here, let's say that because some of them haven't gotten to the point of being approved, but let's be realistic, it's probably going to take 3 to 5 years to actually build them out. All right, that's a realistic time frame for them to start, sell things, so these numbers aren't going to come online like a light switch where it's going to turn on. So the township board has already gone through and made commentary or policy that people that had paid into the SADs, there's no REUs being saved for those particular properties. There's nothing legally responsible for that. Am I correct? All right. What happens if these projects get approved and that we allocate say, we'll just use a number, 300 REUs to that project. But the project stops after a period of time. Are we legally obligated to hold those 300 units to that development project? Is that going to be an issue? Because if you look at all of these things, that is a potential for that to happen, because even though a developer may want to finish it, there may be economic issues that come up that they can't finish it. So now we have a project that we've allocated numbers to that are going to come out of our wastewater treatment plant numbers that we're keeping track of, and they may not ever end up utilizing that. Or will they, and is there a perpetuity issue? How long are they held for? Because, you know, if this wouldn't be even a talking point if we weren't up against the hard cap numbers, to me. But we are. So I think it's something that we seriously need to consider when we're talking about this. When we're approving these developments and they're tapping into our wastewater treatment plant, how long are we obligated to hold those numbers? Because according to the township board, the SADs don't have any legal holding of that. So again, this is one of those questions you may not be able, you may have to punt. Ms. Chick.
Well, number one, that was my question as well, but they haven't reached final approval, so I think we have to have that determination figured out before we do a final approval, because I agree, they could stop anytime and not do it, and then they could come back for, you know, they want to come back again and again and again to get reapproved and reapproved and reapproved, and you're holding that property for how many years? I've seen that happen for almost 7 years with one piece of property. We don't want to hold those.
And I drive back and forth to Farmington Hills every day, and there was developments along 7 Mile in Northfield that started and then completely stopped. And so, you know, that rolls into my mind. It's like things happen, and where are we in our decision-making process? How are we going to address that?
So I think that should be run by the township attorney and included in any township policy. A couple points of clarification. Number one is these approvals, some have been approved, some have not been approved yet. But their approvals are good for a certain period of time, and they expire. Even the site plan approval is only good for a certain period of time.
But as long as they start the project, that complies with our ordinance that they've started the project, and therefore their site plan can continue as long as they are in the process of starting something.
So I don't really understand the terminology, beginning to start something. That's nothing. Unless they've broken ground.
That's what I mean.
Unless they've pulled a building permit, broken ground, then there's no project. Unless they've done that, then there's no project.
With these PUDs, how many qualifies for that? If they break ground for one property, does that make that whole thing?
If they break ground, then they conceivably would have also committed to paying tap fees. So they would be on the hook to pay whatever it is. But if they haven't paid for anything, again, that's why I suggest you run it by the attorney. But if their plans don't materialize, then I would say that you're not obligated to provide the sewer capacity to those sites, and they just go back to the undeveloped property that they were beforehand.
Julie, I think if you look at the ordinances, I believe the tap fees have to be paid at the time a building permit is issued. So, yeah.
But there's permits pulled for each.
That's correct.
Right.
But it's a complete project, it's a PUD, so it's a totality of all of them rather than an individual. So if they pull one tap, if they build for one and they pull one permit, that's one tap fee. They're not going to be on the hook for 200 of them.
So again, a couple of things. The PUDs require the township and the developer to enter into an agreement.
Right.
And so the current reviews that we wrote and recommended to the township for both of those PUDs was that they will have to pay for any sewer-related improvements or sewer-related costs associated with their projects. So when the attorney, and you get to the point where you're going to approve these for final approval, that should be locked in to the agreement.
Well, what we're talking about, I think, needs to be discussed there too, because that does relate not just to their development, but to everything else that we're talking about. I mean, the whole sewer thing is all dependent on those numbers. And so we need to know if they stop development, you know, that their numbers are only going to be held for a certain amount of time, and then they're not going to be any more commitment, and then they will fall under our new ordinance, whatever that's going to be, that they're going to have to, if they decide we're stopping for 2 years and then start back up again, you're going to have to go through and now pay for the additional expense of upgrading whatever it is needs to be upgraded. I think that needs to be down in, or at least a discussion of that, someplace that needs to take place.
For sure.
And then rolling into that whole thing, because these were the things I was talking about. The state of Michigan tapping into this. What control do we have over the state of Michigan tapping into our sewer lines with, say, they do an expansion up on 9 Mile there? Do we have any say-so on what they can tap into and add into our system? Or how
I've
about,
never seen an agreement between the township and the state of Michigan.
how about Green Oak? Because we don't have an agreement right now. What's to prevent Green Oak from tapping into our system and adding capacity?
That I can speak a little with more conviction on. There is one agreement with Green Oak that is still in effect for the lake area. And I believe that certainly has a limit, and the last I knew, there was 96 or 97 REUs left in that. And that would be it. That would be the maximum that they could add.
So what happens when there is no agreement?
Well, then you're not forced to take it on. You'd have to, by mutual agreement between the township and Green Oak.
But if they're, and I'm not saying they're going to, but I'm saying if there is a trunk line that's in Green Oak, what's to stop them from tapping into it?
You need an agreement to come to your plant.
It's in their township.
What if they tap into it anyways?
Your agreement, the current agreement with Green Oak has a defined geography and a defined number of REUs. So you need a new agreement that both parties would have to enter into to expand that in any way.
But no agreement.
just
It's an honesty thing then. It's purely honesty then,
No,
at that point.
there's an agreement, yeah.
I know, but if the agreement isn't existing, what stops some builders from developing a small little development and connecting to it without our,
I would suspect that Brian, operating the plant, would notice that there's an issue and be able to track it down in a heartbeat and then shut them off. Or make them.
All I'm asking is that.
A bootleg connection.
In having this discussion, we have not just people in Northfield Township contributing to this, we have people in another township and actually in another county that's contributing to it too. And what is to prevent that from expanding into our, what rules do we have that will affect them since they're a separate form of government other than an agreement?
Well, I mean, it would be illegal for them to connect to your sewer. Lawsuits.
Like really unlawful, like felonious.
Yeah.
Like go to jail for a long time.
I'm just saying, it's like
Plus, I'm sorry, no engineer would tap into it. You couldn't get any other jurisdictional approvals from the county or whatever unless whoever was tapping into it could demonstrate that they have the approval of the person who operates and controls the capacity. It just doesn't happen. So please,
all right, so.
we got enough to worry
Okay.
about. That's not.
All right, well,
Don't let that keep you up at night.
I'm not, just a question.
Yeah, no, it's a good one.
It's not like governments haven't done things they're not supposed to do. I'm not saying they're going to. I'm asking the question. So what happens if they then want to put up a development up Whitmore Lake Road, and they want to tap into our system?
Well, the Green Oak Township supervisor would have to ask the Northfield Township the Board of Trustees whether you want to entertain that or not.
Okay.
We've actually asked them if they plan on doing anything. They said no. They are absolutely no interest in doing anything there, yeah.
Cool. I guess that covers that. All right. Just to get everybody's blood flowing. All right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Should I finish up? I had like two more slides to go, so.
I have more questions when you're done.
Fair enough.
Okay, all right.
I don't like to leave things unfinished. So it actually turned out, we started this, it had been a long time since we looked at the capacity, from the ground up, which we did do, and lo and behold, we feel pretty good that that 1.3 million gallons per day number is accurate. We feel okay about the 1,100 REUs on the table. The plant will be in pretty good shape. I guess the conclusion, though, is if you wish to grow beyond that, you really do need to start planning what to do with the treatment plant. Improvements to consider at the treatment plant are here. Again, I don't want to go through each line. We could talk about treatment plants all night. I don't think that's what we want to do, but major construction is not inexpensive. And, there's six different components we'd have to touch. And they total somewhere between about 16 million and just over 20 million. I give you that range because there is a textbook value how to size some of this stuff and a more practical value how to size some of these processes. And Tetra Tech has had some pretty good luck getting the Michigan Eagle, which permits the treatment plant to consider a more modest way to size some of these to save some costs. So that's where the range comes in. We think the lowest would be about 16 million. The highest would be just over 20 million. And we'd have to touch most of the elements that we talked about on the flow diagram. Primarily, the cost is with the biological process, getting rid of the trickling filter and expanding the aeration tanks. Although I will say, too, the disinfection, currently used chlorine. It's been used for 70 or 80 years to disinfect. Obviously, chlorine has some safety concerns with it, and so if you were to touch disinfection system, you would really want to think about using ultraviolet light to disinfect. It's such a smaller risk to the people working with it than the chlorine, and the neighbors around the plant as well. So hence, that's really the only change of process associated with this. Most of the other is capacity related. I just want to also point out that the 8 Mile Road pump station and the North Territorial pump station, North Territorial will be pretty much at capacity when these developments occur, the ones that are working their way through. 8 Mile only has 400 or 500 REUs after that before an improvement would be needed. So there are millions of dollars associated with those improvements too that would need to happen. I just wanted a single slide on that so you had everything in one spot. I didn't have to come back in a month and say, oh, wait a minute, there's another, I think it's around $8 million with these, in addition to the plant associated with growth. So the focus in my April request by the board was to look at the plant, but I've been carrying this stuff forward just because I don't want to forget that that's out there as well.
Mr. Gordon.
Mr. Rubel, the 16 to 21 million dollar estimate would provide how many more REUs?
About 3,000. And I think we're going to learn that that is fairly close to what the master plan is preliminarily shaking out. We still have some dialogue to go back and forth, but our initial discussions were that was kind of matching.
And an REU is a household, and the average household has 2.5 people in it, according to the census. So that would add, we would add another 7,500 residents potentially, which would be maybe a 60% jump from what this current 1,100 RUs is going to provide the township as another 3,000 or thereabouts people.
Yeah, 60, 70% increase, something like
Yeah,
that.
30, yeah, okay.
Where are we at now? If we're adding the 1,100?
I think you have about 3,500 customers. Now, some of those are more than one REU.
Right, I was thinking more in terms of population. If we have 1,119 more REUs is about 2,800 people at that 2.5 per household, and that jumps us from a population of about 8,500 to almost 11,000, which is a 30% increase in population. Granted, it'll happen over a 3 to 5 year period, but still, like you said, a very short period of time, a very large increase in population during that time. That was the question I had at the moment. I got another one, but I got to reframe it.
Ms. Check.
So that 3,500 also includes businesses, not all residential?
That's correct.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Yep.
All right, so I have a couple of comments. You already answered a bunch of them already, so I appreciate that. But one of the comments made at the board is that the issue should have been looked at much sooner, and the township should have had a policy in place to get developments currently underway to contribute to the cost of serving them. Well, they do pay for us to serve, or for the sewer system, so I'm not sure where that came from, but I didn't know if they were speaking to the upgrades that we're looking at for the plant, or if they're speaking to master planning, that we should have planned better so that we weren't expecting either PUDs or, huge growth in areas where we can't support it anyway. But either way, as far as the plant goes, it took us from 1988 to, almost 2017 to get the equalization basin put in because there was just no support to do it. And then it took us from what we knew back in 2015 that we needed to have this trunk line upgraded, and this is 10 years later. We're just now getting to do it. So it's not like we haven't been trying to get things done, but you have to have the support of the boards and the township, and up until this point, we hadn't gotten it. So I wanted to comment on that. And then my other concern is that we have been trying also very, very hard to focus on our downtown area. Our downtown needs new businesses, not necessarily homes, because I don't know where we could put them all, but they do need business. And the whole purpose of the park was, and the purpose of the split was to allow possibly for that back 10 acres of the park to support some kind of business and expand our downtown. Because there's all kinds of things that the people in downtown area and the township have been asking for as long as I've been here, 25 years, that we're not providing for them. And so my concern is, are we going to be able to put in a couple of 3, 4 businesses in the downtown area with what we have left after the 1,100?
It's going to be very tight. I mean, a handful is never going to make a meaningful difference, but what is the policy? Is it 5 or is it 100? 100 is going to be a big deal.
We don't even have room for 100 yet.
No, 5 or 10 isn't going to be a big deal, and correct. I just, that's something that's going to be up to the board. I just don't know where you draw the line.
Okay, and then my other concern is we've still got people trying to build. In fact, I think Julie might be able to confirm that we've seen more individual residential. They're not building necessarily in the downtown area. I don't know if they're on the sewer system or not. Probably most of them aren't, but we're seeing an influx of people, individuals wanting to build in the township as well. So we want to be able to serve them. So, we kind of went bonkers down at at North Fairtown, Whitmore Lake Road at the expense of this area down here, and that's my concern.
Yeah, Mr. Kennedy.
Just for clarity, I think it's easy for us to wrap our heads around the residential unit. It's a family, it's a house. When we talk about businesses, what are the ranges that businesses use in terms of REUs?
Well, there's a whole table in your ordinance. There must be 40 different categories. Yeah. Some small retail is no different than a house. Right. A restaurant has more water use, might be 10 or 20 houses. Some industry has very little. just restrooms. Automotive industry that uses water would be really high. I think a marijuana growing operation is quite high as well. So, boy, it's really variable depending on the use. That's just some examples I can throw out.
You know, in the redoing of the master plan, we're trying to make sure that our ordinances coordinate with our future land use map and everything else. And Trustee Chick said tonight that the board has a policy that if a new developer comes in or a new big project comes in, they're going to have to pay for the expansion that's required to handle their REUs. I kind of get that, but at the same time, we have this report from Mr. Rubel that says we're looking at $16 to $20 million and that it should all be done at once. How does that match up with, I mean, is it even realistic that a developer is going to come in and say, sure, I'll pick up a $15 or $20 million or $28 million if it affects the pump stations? So what needs to change? The numbers here, can they be tailored to a developer that comes in with a project that we want for an expansion that's only 10% as much as this one? Or are we just simply telling everybody, close for business, we're done? Because it seems to me that over the last couple of years, the approval of these 1,100 units has really reduced our options dramatically in terms of bringing any kind of growth to downtown, which was a priority. So I consider that to be kind of short-sighted.
Well, you brought up something tonight that I didn't know, that we still have 96 REUs that Green Oak has an agreement with us on, so that's not rolled into this number either. And so you just said 100 is a big deal, so I mean, there we have 96 right there. If they decided they were going to utilize that, we'd have to end up having that capacity for them. And
yeah, I mean, it's about 100 is where I can start to measure, at the plant, where it makes a meaningful amount. The Chestnut one, I just didn't have good numbers. I'm not sure where we are. Are we closer to being done or closer to beginning? That's 260 right there, so they must have 50 or 60 left, so maybe that offsets the 90-some in Green Oak.
so a lot of what we're discussing here right now is, in my opinion, the township board has been the decision makers for all of this stuff, regardless the expansions of the wastewater treatment plant or not. The developments that we're looking at right now are all kind of driven that way. And to me, over the past 15 or 20 years, I can say that the township boards have not been looking forward to what we're talking about now, because we're here now talking about a $15 or $20 million development, but we've just uploaded all of this stuff in the past couple of years. And to me, that was probably not good thinking or not good planning on their part. I don't believe that they've been good stewards of looking forward for managing this property. I just don't think so. I mean, and you're not going to say anything, but I just don't think that it's been good on that to keep kicking it down the road, because the costs just keep going up. And Mr. Gordon brings out a good point. At what point do we end up saying now, apparently now we're at that point where a developer is going to want to come in and we're going to say, you're going to have to pay for this. And nobody's going to pay $16 million to increase. So it means basically we're going to be at a point where we're stuck here now telling developers, this is what you're going to have to pay, and they're just going to bypass us. So essentially, we're closing down development in our township because of this. Just my opinion.
Big residential development, yes.
Well, it sounds to me like anything. Anything that's of any substantial, use. That's just, we shouldn't have gotten to this point, at this point where it's all front-loaded. Now it's basically, here it is. Mr. Zarzaki.
In conjunction with your point about getting to this point, I've got a copy of the township's capital improvement plan for the wastewater treatment plant for 2019 to 2024. They had originally planned $7.3 million in improvements. And those were basically the new aeration system in 2019 to 20, which was 169,000. Sanitary sewer improvements, 75,000. Detailed list of improvements, it doesn't say what they are, 251,000. Engineering, bonding, and costs for the retention tank was 200,000. In 2021, the retention tank, 3.5 million. Sanitary sewer improvement, 75,000. 21, 22, replaced 2 pump stations, 200,000 each, so that's 400,000. Sanitary sewer line replacement, 2,075,000. 22, 23, they were supposed to put in the UV disinfection. They had allotted 225,000, and I think yours listed it at much more than that. So, and a sanitary sewer again for another 75,000. And then for this last year, 23, 24, 4 generators for 200,000. I assume those were for the pump stations. And a sanitary sewer again, replacement 75,000, all totaling 7.3 million. And I don't think we spent that.
We've done some of it. We paid for the equalization basins done. We've done some things that were brought to us from the wastewater treatment plan as far as things that they needed, but we've done some of it.
Yes, that's
But it's a, you know, it's a wish list, basically, with,
I understand, but this was something that was supposedly going to be followed, I had hoped. At least we'd be a little bit closer to not being in the situation we are now.
Mr. Thomas?
I have a question for Mr. Rubel. And forgive me if I didn't understand this correctly, but your $15.9 to $20.7 million estimate, did I hear that that's basically of no use unless there's an additional approximate $8 million done to upgrade the pump stations?
Yeah, we need to get it to the plant.
Okay.
So,
So let's be really careful when we talk, because things get shorthanded in the public discourse. This is not $16 to $21 million. It's $24 to $29 million.
30 million, easy number.
Okay. So as a group, when we talk, if we're talking about cost, we're really talking about $30 million is the way that we would shorthand discuss this. Okay.
just to clarify it, though, that included 2 upgrades for the North Territorial Pump Station and the 8 Mile Pump Station. Depending on where the development occurs, if it occurs in the gravity area, it would just be a portion of the 8 million, not all of it. But
So ideally, the costs of these expansions should be borne by the people that are actually on the system. Is that correct? I mean, they're the ones using it.
should be. I mean, I don't,
I don't tap into the system. Why should I have to end up bearing the cost of that?
as opposed to a general fund of the township.
Correct.
Yeah, the sewer utility in some way, shape, or form should pay
So
for the cost.
there should be some discussion about how the people that are, and not just people, but any businesses or anything like that are on the system, how this is going to be managed for them to pay for this.
I think there's a lot of discussion about how to pay for this.
Ms. Chick?
The sewer tap fees and your user fees are what pays for repairs and maintenance and upgrades in the plant. Currently, I believe the wastewater treatment plant might have $2 to $3 million in their fund. So for all those things that you mentioned, actually would come out of the wastewater treatment plant fund. So they can't pay for it if they don't have the funds to do it. So we can plan or put a wish list together for things we'd like to do, but until the funding is there, they can't do it. Yeah, typically it's been not the the users do pay for it with their fees and the tap fees and the developments. When if all of these developments come in, I think the wastewater treatment plant would probably have a total of like $8 million in their fund. So they're going to have money to do some of this stuff as well.
But it's still short of $30 million.
Yeah,
That's
if
the
you do
point.
it all- If you do it all at one time, so typically the township or a community would either borrow the money or go out for millage.
Right, but I'm saying that the tap fees, all those things that are associated with the uses of the system should be looked at to adjust to accommodate the future expansion. That means building into that now so that people that are going to be tapping into it in the future are going to be paying a higher portion of those fees to help expand it, or because they're the ones tapping into creating the issue, not the people that are currently on it. So I just think that ends up being fair. So here's a question for you, Janet. Is that, has the township board actually sat down and looked at these numbers to seriously go over the tap fees to make sure that those tap fees are going to be covering some future expansions?
Yes, we did, and we got a study from the, I don't know if it would increase, I don't know if it included the future items that you provided in here, but when we last looked at this, we did the study of, we raised the user fee for the users. We also looked at raising our tap fee, but it was hard to substantiate at the time, increasing it to, I think it was 9,000 was the next step up. But we're currently at $8,000, something in that area. We certainly can take a look and see, but if you're talking about $30 million, you're also probably looking at a huge tap fee that most developers couldn't even afford, I would think, depending on how quickly you want to do your expansion.
Mr. Kennedy.
I mean, it seems like there are two questions for a planning commission to be looking at. One is kind of the near term, how do we deal with what we have and what people want to do in the near term? And then it seems like there needs to be a 25-year look of, you know, because this happened, again, 25 years ago, big expansion in 1999, and we're now just using that up. That's what these systems do. They are big projects that, you know, create a lot of capacity, and we don't use that capacity for 25 years or so. So it seems like we need to look at, okay, what is the land use plan? What do we think this wants to look like? And what are the funding opportunities? Because without talking about the funding, we're just whistling.
So, and we're going to go one more here because I'm thinking about this. There was a, right down in Salem Township, there was a big thing about putting in a wastewater treatment plant or putting in a line through all these communities, and nobody likes the end product for that. Has anybody ever approached the township about running a line down North Territorial to hook into our system so that perhaps those developers can help pay for our expansion now?
What developers?
It's along Godfredson Road. That's why this whole thing is going on in Plymouth and all those things that they wanted to put, because they don't have the ability, they want to put in a big subdivision and.
They have no plant, you're saying, whereas you have a plant that they could pay to expand.
Well, do you know about it? Are you aware of that?
Not really,
All right.
no.
So this has been a big contention in that area for a number of years. And the state was saying that they were going to issue a permit for a wastewater treatment plant. And tell me if I'm wrong, because I think you probably know about it.
I did read about this in the paper.
And so the other option was to put this long sewer line through Plymouth and tapping into, I believe, Ypsilanti.
I think it was Ypsilanti, yeah.
And all these communities didn't want to have that. They didn't want the roads all torn up for that development. And I'm like, did anybody ever actually approach Northfield Township about running a line straight down North Territorial to our plant, to where then we could look into using whatever it is they were going to do to expand our plant to handle that extra capacity?
I doubt they're going to pay for extra capacity, right?
Well, I don't.
If they pay you, it's going to be to cover the capacity to serve their development. right?
I don't know.
You might
I'm just,
want-
I'm just asking a question. I don't have an answer, and neither do you. Just a question, so. Mr. Gordon?
If we're trying to look at the numbers, just tell me if I'm wrong. If the expansion for the cost of approximately $30 million is going to give us 3,000 REUs, and each one of those would be a tap fee, right? So to cover it, it would be $10,000 per tap fee, would cover the 30 million. But the consequence of that would be you would have 7,500 more people in the township, and our population would increase by 70% post the 4 developments coming in right now that are going to take us from 8,500 to 11,000 some. So this would take us from 11 to almost 20,000, 19,000. My concern is that when you start going down this path, 20 years from now, you won't recognize Northfield Township. It'll just be a big suburb. And you start chasing yourself. So I don't know how you can do this and pursue the goals of the community at large. You know, you don't want to get trapped into something where, well, now we got to pay for this $30 million. How are we going to do it? Well, let's get more people. Then, you know.
I assume that there's a larger tap fee for commercial and industrial taps. I mean, they're not going to pay the same as a house tap fee.
It's based on REUs, and as we talked about a few minutes ago, depending on the land use, it may have different REU number than one. So that, yes, those that use more water should pay a larger tap fee.
So who's responsible for determining that?
That's part of the site plan review process. It goes through, and that's calculated as part of the reviews.
All right, I think it was a good discussion.
Yeah, it seems to me that as a planning commission, we kind of have to look at this in terms of the master plan and, you know, make a recommendation to the board in terms of, you know, what we would do. The only other thought I had about this whole process is that I think it'd be really helpful at this point in time to create a baseline data bank of where we're at today, so that 5 years from now, we can look back and say, well, before these developments start coming in, these were the number of people we had, the tax rate, the number of police calls, the number of fire calls, medical emergencies, you know, just from a planning standpoint, to be able to understand the impacts of the developments. John, wouldn't it make sense to have some kind of baseline to start with, you know, especially since this is going to be such a big change in the community?
That would be great. Those cost of service studies are expensive. They're challenging. There's a ton of assumptions that get challenged. You know as well as anyone else, the cost of service study that was done by U of M was challenged by the Mackinac Institute, and you know there's so many different assumptions that go into it.
I'm not really talking about doing a cost of services study.
That's exactly what you're talking about. I think he is. He's talking about every new development generates a cost and a revenue, right? It generates more traffic. It generates more demand for public safety. It has all these costs associated with it, right? And it's offset by some revenue stream, typically property taxes, but we're talking about a lot of different options here, special assessments, you know, user fees and things like that all get calculated into it to figure out at the end of the day if your future land use plan and development scenario pencils out and is revenue neutral.
Yeah, I
exactly
understand.
what he's talking
I understand the cost of services study, and I've looked at a bunch of them. And the Scioto Township did one, and the Mackinac Center obviously would have issues with anything that's anti-development. But that's not the point I'm trying to make. I'm just trying to say that we should have a series of. I mean, I went onto Google and said, "How do you determine what the baseline, where you're at right now as a township, as of this date, like before?" Before Chestnut broke ground, we should be able to see here, this was our tax base, this was the number of police calls, and then we would just have that data sitting there. 5 years from now, we can look at it and look at those same numbers and say, well, these are the changes. There's no projections, there's no assumptions that need to be made. It's simply trying to collect baseline data.
And the master plan will have a lot of that information in it, right? It'll have the number of households, it'll have the number of police officers, public safety officers, and things like that. In the master plan, it'll have that.
I have seen in our master plan that it has census data and household data and all that kind of stuff, which is helpful. I'm talking about maybe just a one sheet that has it all in one place, so that 5 years from now or 10 years from now, the planning commission can say, well, this is where we've gone, this is where we were, and this is where we are now, and are we happy with that? Is this what we expected, and did we meet the expectations? And
I think what he's asking for, we could easily get from the information that we have available on hand. What monies were spent on these different things. I'm sure we can get from the police department, well, how many calls they had last year. And, you know, those, I don't think we need to do a whole study, but I think we can pull that information from then I think what you're looking for, from what we currently have available. Ms. Chick?
Yeah, the police and fire department put out a report of number of calls every month, so it's already available if somebody wants to pick it out and summarize it.
And actually, this is a good time to roll into this. Ms. Chick shared a document from our police department about exactly the growth and, you know, them not being included in some of the discussions on growth and how it's going to affect them.
Yeah, I was actually going to bring it up at the end as one of my comments, because we get the fire department to look into any development coming in and give their 2 cents worth on whatever it is that they need to talk about or advise us about as far as planning issues. The police department does not, and I think they want to be included at least to look at the plan, make suggestions, you know, whatever's applicable to a planning situation, they would like to be included, because they do have some safety concerns about how things are done and the ease of issues of criminal activity.
Okay. All right. It was a good discussion. Yes, Mr. Kennedy.
So, I really like Mr. Gordon's comments, and I like the fact that you're thinking, okay, if we did this, we could support all these people who really want that. And I think that's obviously what we need to be looking at, right? Is there any, you know, besides the $30 million number, right, which buys us a lot of capacity, which I think we would say we probably don't foresee needing to have that for a long time, so it's an overbuy. Is there any other, you know, break point that's a reasonable system upgrade? Or is it really 0 or 30, and that's kind of the world?
Why don't you come sit down over here like we talked about earlier? That way you don't have to get up and down. You can just sit there.
for them, it's exercise.
Well, it's working, but
Yeah.
I mean, as I mentioned earlier, we were showing that it was literally 100 or 200 REUs between a interim level and then needing to commit to something else. And boy, it just didn't look workable to us to spend all this money to get to a certain point, and then one development would push you into another big project. You could certainly do that. I just worry that it would not be perceived as effective, because it would only be partial.
Horribly economically inefficient.
There's some economy of scale. Certainly, a bigger project should cost a little bit less than 2 smaller ones.
But, thank you, appreciate that.
Yeah.
And, you know, it does make sense that it would be efficient to do it at certain levels. So as an engineer, that makes sense that would be the answer. You know, as a planning commission, I think we could also look at some of the things were brought up, like, hey, what if we sell our extra capacity to other people, Green Oak or whatever? And is that part of our planning process of different scenarios that we could lay out? It seems like that's the kind of thing we should be looking at. Because I think we do want some growth, but this bill, you know, if it's a 300-unit development, it's the $100,000 per house. That just doesn't work. Right, so I don't think we want to close the door, but how do we keep the door open a little bit that we want, that we, you know, look forward to, and then can we pay for it some other way?
And there are municipal finance people who I am not one of, I should not practice a discipline that I am not an expert at, who would gladly brainstorm with you about ways to finance projects. So yes, if that's something that might be might be worth doing, absolutely.
You just have to be able to pay it back. That's the kicker, yeah.
So I know this is all a numbers thing. You know, we're all talking about numbers, and as I brought up, the numbers that we're talking about, the 1,100, they're not a guarantee that that's 1,100 is going to come out of our plant capacity. This is just kind of what we're talking about at this point, proposed things. Is there a counter, a number that, I mean, you didn't know about how many was done at the Chestnut right now, how many have been tapped into. Is there a counter that we can have and keep track of what it is that we're looking at, what's going to top out our plant capacity, so that as things come online, we can just deduct that, so that at some point in time, this is the end where you need to make a decision? Because otherwise, we're talking about stuff that may or may not fall in line. It may take 3 or 5 years, it may take 10 years, so that we can know, not just for us as a planning commission, but as a community, you know, you're getting close to that number because here's the tally. Is there a way to keep track of that tally?
Yeah, as each site plan is approved, there's no reason that somebody couldn't keep a running total.
Well, what is, I guess we need to know what starting total is, or, you know, what's the starting number?
The starting total is 3,500.
Yeah.
3,500.
Is that a reasonable?
The capacity is 4,500, and you've currently got 3,500. That's it, there you go.
Well, do you count up or count down? It'd be easier for me to count down from 1,100 and just
Right.
take off as you approve.
Yeah, but 1,100 isn't the exact number, though, is that? I thought you said that.
19.
Well, I'm just saying, so you were saying 1,100.
If you're asking for an exact number, I'm going to tell you you can't do it.
None of this is exact.
Exactly.
So these are all just guesses.
That's,
So,
Number of units.
and at some point, you said that at 85% capacity, you've got to start expanding, right?
at 85%, you may have difficulty from Michigan Eagle getting permission to keep adding.
All right. So that's the number right there. That's the red line number.
And
What
that's
is that number?
That's what 1,100 is.
But that's 1,100 add, though,
I'm sorry?
additional to the 3,500.
Correct. Yeah.
But the, so,
The additional 1,100 tabs is going to put you at that red line.
is that it?
That's correct.
4,600
Okay.
is our tops.
Are we going to have to turn a restaurant away from downtown at some point?
That's why I'm asking these questions.
Are we going to have to turn 2 restaurants away from downtown?
Right?
That's why I'm asking these questions. It's
Because if
like-
we're there, we better do something about that.
That's why I asked the question, are we going to have to hold the numbers to a development that may not finish, and for how long? That's why I'm saying these numbers, we need to figure that out, because,
And we can decide if we can, we can decide if we want to use the 96 from Greeno too. But,
well, I mean,
that's a board, decision.
but for us to do our planning, we need to know what we're planning for.
Right.
And
That's what we're doing. We're doing the master plan.
I understand, but we have a number, 1,100. All right. That we've got kind of in the pipeline, but they're not done. They may not get done. They may get partly done. I understand. It's like, so for us to do this planning,
So the question is, what happens if a restaurant comes into downtown? If a restaurant comes into downtown, we just got a marijuana facility in downtown. That's going to be a large water consumer, right? If a restaurant comes into downtown, it means it's going to replace an existing business most likely, right?
There's 7
So it's
empty
not going to
buildings,
be zero sum. It's going to be an incremental increase
Yep.
over and above what was there before.
maybe 75 Barker's an exception, because that
What was
was,
there before? right? Were they connected to the system before?
And it was a fire
It
department.
was the fire department. However,
Showers?
they want to put in however many.
Seven.
They want to put in 7
Says
apartments.
7 units, 7 REUs.
That'd probably be less than a restaurant.
Yep.
So,
But they all come out of that same number.
but we also made some assumptions in terms of the usage in the land use plan. Okay?
And the reason I don't like the 1,100 number, I like the 3,500 number, is because what our plant capacity is, we'll just throw out there 4,500. 85% of that is your red line, the total capacity, not 85% of 1,100.
The 4,500 is the red line. That's the 85%, that if you go above that,
4,500 is the red line?
Eagle will not pay, will light you up.
All right, so that's the counter that I would like to see is from, if we're talking about 3,500 now, every time we add on or take off, or that we should end up seeing that number going up so that we keep
Also,
track of that.
You know, again, using the restaurant as an example, a restaurant goes out of business and a shoe store goes in. All of a sudden, you got extra capacity.
Right.
So the system is not going to be finite. It's going to continue to fluctuate up and down. That's why there's 15% built in. So
That's why these
you don't
small
have stuff
individual,
squirting all over the place.
these small individual things we're talking about, individual house or even a small restaurant or stuff, it's not going to significantly impact that. But we still need to kind of keep track of those totals so that we, you know, they're all adding into that.
How do we not know out of the 1,100, how many have already tapped? How come we don't have that number?
I'm sure we do.
We just don't have it here.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure we do.
They have that, what, 260 units, or 257 in the Chestnut One, and we don't know if they've all connected or not.
Well, I can tell you they have not.
Okay,
What that number is, I don't know.
Right.
Well over 50%.
So
It's well, did you say well over 50%?
I can find out, but I just
Okay, cool.
haven't.
So I would like to know, I would like to see a tracker so that when we're talking about this stuff, we can sit down and get a visualization where we're moving. And we know where we're moving towards, but at what point are we going to hit that or get close to that? Because even though we don't have any say-so on it, it's going to end up giving the people on the township board, they're like, hey, you got, because it's going to take 3 years to build, right? Increase capacity? 3 years?
I'd plan for 3 years.
All right.
Well, you say you don't have any input on it, but currently we have, you know, the PUDs that go through the process, right? And they get evaluated by us, the planner and the engineer, to see if there's going to be an impact on the township systems.
Right.
That's why we put provisions
Right.
in it to say, if there are any, the developer's going to have to contribute to that issue. And that's especially important when they're asking for density modifications. But the density modifications that they're asking for are reviewed within the context of the density of your master plan, right? So if it's over and above your master plan, that's an issue.
You missed what I was meaning. I'm saying we don't have any input on the expansion of the plant, because we don't. We have input into what is going to add to the plant, but at some point, we need to be able to say, the township board needs to know that number. They need to see that number too, so that as we're going along, it's like, listen, we're going to have an issue with this development pushing us at that number. You guys need to do something to make that happen.
So, and again, not to belabor this, but the Planning Commission and the Township Board have to work together. The State Plan and Enabling Act requires the Planning Commission to review the township's capital improvement plan.
They took that away from us.
I don't know what that means.
The board does it, we don't do
But you
it.
have to at least review it. And the whole purpose of that is so that you can say, hey, wait a minute, time out. We've got a future land use plan that is talking about this type of development, and that and the capital improvement are not aligned. That's your role, is to point that out. And the township board ultimately will approve the capital improvement plan, obviously, because they're going to fund it. But you have a role in that capital improvement plan.
I've never seen one. Has anybody ever seen one?
No, a lot of communities may not have. But
No, you saw that there, but it's no, at the planning commission.
We did it at the planning commission initially, yeah.
What year was that?
That was before 20,
That's why I never saw one.
probably 16.
Anyways, I understand that that's supposed to happen. It's,
So if you want someone, who do you want to track the number?
you mean for the REUs?
Yes.
Well, I think we should end up having Brian
I
help.
think I'm going to take that. I mean, I'll look, I mean, how do we track the data? Because we do have the data. We have in the monthly reports, we have flow rates. Mr. McDonald sends the flow rates, which will be really helpful to in real time kind of show us how we are increasing. That does get sent out on a monthly basis.
Right.
We don't have it in an easy to read. I mean, you'd have to look at each month. So, I mean, is that a chart? So I'll take that on, look at options on how we can provide some of the data and more of a user-friendly, take what police, fire, wastewater, and put that into kind of a one
The flow rates,
snapshot.
I don't think we're concerned about that. I think we're concerned about a hard number, like as we're moving along here.
But he can provide it in his report, is what you're suggesting, right?
That's, I think that would be.
Because right now, there's no REUs in the report.
Because I think, I mean, as we look, being new, I looked at Mr. Rubel's report. With what we have planned right now, we will be at capacity, but it is supportable. So the 4 developments right now are supportable.
Yes.
And we don't know if we'll put everything in. I would assume it's probably going to be a little bit less, but, you know. So the decision for the Planning Commission and why we kind of put this here was to look at the future land use, and this may be a good segue, and to ensure that we are clear-eyed if we want to grow more beyond the 4 that are in various stages of the process, that we now have to, you know, I have to generate options and to the board, how are we going to pay for this? Because we now know that we need a capital improvement plan for, and that's the decision. If we decide to grow more, then we need what Mr. Rubel is talking about. If we don't, and I think that will help drive what the future land use, because there are ways that we can tailor it to either turn down the volume on growth or continue to grow. And I think that's kind of how I see it coming in. And so I acknowledge I'll take the data to help provide more clarity. And I think, but I'd say we're okay with those 4 developments.
No, and I don't think we're even disputing that. All I'm saying is that for us, in order to help manage what we're doing for the future, whether it be a small development or small thing, for us to see that running total number. If we start off with 3,500, I don't know what the plant capacity, see, because the plant capacity is always listed down as gallons per day or millions of gallons per day, which doesn't relate into what we're talking, unless we do the math. But can we safely utilize, Mr. Rubel, can we safely utilize Mr. Jackson's numbers as just an approximate? Is that safe? 3,500 REUs is the plant utilization right now.
I think he got that from me originally, so.
So we can use that.
That's what I remember from the rate study. It's within 100 or 200 of that number.
So, it's like a budget number, right? It's not like you're going to the bank to cash a check. It's a budget number. It's a large picture way to manage your assets. That's what it is. It's not a check that you can write.
Right, but can we,
Budget, it's a bucket.
can we see that, all right,
Yeah.
3,500, and then, you know, whatever it is that, that is going to add on to that. If somebody does a tap fee and they're going to pay for that, that just kind of ticks off that, or adds on to that, I should
Yep.
say. And that way, we can start seeing a number like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'd like to take issue with the comment you made, like, well, we're good, because I think you've missed the point some of the points that have been made recently, right? If restaurants come in, that's near term, and that's something that the Planning Commission needs to understand and be able to talk to the board about. And that's not in the plan, but it might be, and, you know, a couple of those could be a big issue. So it's not just, we're good with these 4, you know, projects that are going to happen, if those happen, we're good. We do need, I think, a real-time accounting of kind of where things stand. Because a couple of things that we're not looking for that are relatively small could create big issues. I think that's what we're looking for. And then there's a separate thing that is the 25-year plan, right? Again, there's two timeframes we need to look at: near term, accounting, what ifs, and then the long-term 25-year plan.
Ms. Chick?
So typically, when I first started doing master plan process, it was master plan. I first started 15 years ago doing the master plan process. We were typically looking out 10, 20, 30 years. I don't think we can do that with this plan because I've got some feedback going, because I think it's going to be too difficult with our sewer system issues to look beyond 5 years or even 10 years for sure. So, and we have to update it every 5 years anyway. So I don't think it's an issue, just to be a little bit prudent about how we're planning, because things have changed a lot just in the, I mean, for 20 years we had no development, and then all of a sudden in 21 we got development, and we're 5 years out, and we're kind of scrambling with things now, so, yeah.
That's a great segue, and the master plan is, you know, you need to look long-term, right? But you also review it every 5 years. So you do have to monitor it on a regular basis to see where you're at in terms of some of the things that Mr. Gordon was talking about. Where, you know, what are the development trends? I mean, we've been trying to redevelop the downtown for decades, right? So, I mean, it's a slow roll on some of these things, but we still want to keep an eye on them and manage them as we go forward. So the sheet that I handed out is basically just reiterating what Brian said. The second column there where it talks about existing land use connections, that's basically the scenario where the existing connections are generating the demand along with the 4 approved projects. So you can see that basically maxes out the capacity of 4,500 REUs, okay? Huge caveat. Brian hasn't seen this in this form yet. We've talked to him a lot about these numbers, so it says draft at the top. I just wanted to show you the methodology and take the chart that I showed you at our last discussion to the next level. So here we also evaluated the 2019 plan, which is the third column, and look at and remember, that was the future land use plan that had mixed-use development and higher density development options and things like that. And you can see the number of REUs that we estimated would be developed, would be demanded under that scenario, 14,000. So that was off the charts. That was the 2019 plan. So the proposed is the future land use plan that we discussed at the last meeting and the one I handed out tonight in a larger format. And you can see the demand there is just over 7,000 REUs at build out. And you can see that the demand or the capacity, it's over the existing capacity, right? It's over the existing capacity of 4,500. But with the $30 million expansion, it's within the capacity. So and more importantly, listen, so that's how these all stack up with respect to the sewer impacts. And you can see the final column there is sort of where we added 320 some acres to the area not served by sewer and reduced the area served by sewer, which is the area shaded in green. We took it out of that area, okay? So and not to mention, we significantly reduced the land use demand by eliminating the future, or the mixed use area. We restricted it, that area around North Territorial in Whitmore Lake to commercial, and reconfigured the boundary to the point where there's very, very little residential development opportunities left within the district. Very little. So That's, the purpose of this chart here. And again, I'm sure I'm going to get some feedback from Brian, which I'm looking forward to.
So in the future land use map that we're looking at right now is what came out of our table discussion. We did this earlier, right?
Yep, and keep in mind that when we had that discussion, we were talking more about what kind of development does the township want to see, not necessarily directly what are the implications, sewer implications, but how do we want to grow over the next several years? Where do we see growth opportunities? What kind of development do we want to see? And then we looked at the implications from a sewer standpoint, and this is the result.
Right, so a lot of the areas that were low-density residential, our future land use map flips those back to ag, right?
Yep.
But I think part of that discussion that we all ended up having, at least that's what I left with, is that was directly implicated because of the sewer capacity issues that we were discussing. Knowing that all of this stuff going around here, and some of it didn't really fit into what we were looking at long-term as our community, because there was low-density residential in areas that weren't served by sewer. And so I think that, at least for me, that was, when I was discussing this, that was part of what I was thinking along the lines too, is we need to reduce the pressure on our wastewater treatment system and the lines and tap-ins by changing our future land use map to something that, agriculture is not allowed to have, at least not right now, so. Mr. Gordon.
John, this document that you passed out when I'm looking at the existing sewer capacity is 4,500. Sewer demanded build-out of 7,009 RUs. That's reflected in this map, our future land use map. So the future land use map that we have here would require a $30 million sewer expansion.
Yep.
So,
and that's why there's the note, the asterisk at the top there where it says proposed. You see the asterisk?
Yeah.
And then you look at the asterisk down at the bottom, it says, the township's sewer system is currently at its maximum capacity. The cost for any future sewer service improvements shall be paid for by developers.
right. So,
Or future users or something to that effect. It's not going to come out of the pocket of the township necessarily.
right. I guess before we go too far down the road of can we afford it and how do we afford the sewer expansion, I think it's important to back up a few steps and say, are the residents interested in seeing this expansion take place and the resulting 70% increase in population for the township? Because if the residents here don't want this, then that should be a big factor in our decision-making process.
So that's the last item I wanted to talk to you guys about is our public input option coming up.
John, before we get to that, could I ask, is it possible with the PUDs, since they aren't finalized yet and they haven't been, and we're in a situation where I'm not sure the board or the planning commission was aware at the time that we gave the recommendation to approve these projects that it was maxing out the wastewater treatment plant, that was going to be the consequence of it. Is it possible to go to these developers and say, listen, we have this new information, and from a community standpoint, we can approve your project, but we need to roll back the units that you get by 15 or 20%? So that we can leave some capacity for downtown development.
So let's not forget the conditions that were placed on the PUDs, and that is a more definitive assessment of the sewer impacts of these projects and what, if any, costs for those services would have to be borne by the developer. As I mentioned earlier in this meeting, that all has yet to be put into the form of an agreement, and so that still has to be done before they get their final approvals. So the sewer impact issue it still has to be quantified, still has to be determined in terms of what the developer's obligations are for that. So to your point, we have a mechanism in place to get to what you're talking about. It's in place right now.
That's great. I'm really happy that we have that. I'm just concerned that, according to Mr. Rubel, it's $30 million or nothing. I mean, that's what we're looking at. It's not a
No.
$5 million
No,
or $10 million.
No, that's not right.
That's not,
We're not going to enter into an agreement with the developers of these 4 projects to pay for a 3,000 REU expansion of the plant. What we're going to do is talk to them about investing in the system so that we don't necessarily short the township and overextend our existing system with their projects.
so, and that would be accomplished how?
That would be through discussions with the developer, the engineers, to figure out, what the impact of their projects are going to have on the system. So it doesn't take us to 105% over the red line. It doesn't take us over the red line. We have acceptable capacity left to accommodate a restaurant in downtown, so on and so forth.
So it would be them reducing their REUs, essentially? No.
It may be for them paying for some way to increase the efficiency of the system, or it could be an upgrade to a line, oversize a line. It could be any number of things, but that has yet to be finalized.
But it could be reducing their REUs,
It could be, but yeah,
because then that would free them up for maybe some stuff downtown.
it could be.
Ms. Chick?
Yeah, I just want to clarify, the board, that 1,100 figure, REU figure, has been pretty static for several months prior to all of these preliminary approvals going through the board. So this is not new information to them, as well as the fact that 85%, we have to start looking at expansion or any leftover REUs we might have to use for small projects. So the board was aware of the REUs and the capacity at the wastewater treatment plant prior to approving any of these preliminary plans.
Can we kind of outline, next time anything goes in print, the actual numbers that equate to almost to 30 million, which includes that 8.3? Can we actually see that in the line item on these? If we're adding that 8.3 million to this 15 to 20 million, now we're talking almost 30.
Oh, yeah, of
So
course.
can we,
Yes,
can
of
we
course.
add that to it and just document?
I hadn't heard that until tonight, so I'll update that.
And, I'm sure some of that 8.3 has been spent already. So it'd be nice to have that in writing.
So, yeah, I'm looking at the 7,000 REUs that are demand at build-out for our proposed. I don't know where that number's coming from. How do we get 7,000? From this plan right here. I mean, besides the places we already know, which is 1,100, all these places that are in orange around the lake already have houses on them. They're not going to be, I mean, so where are we getting that 7,000 number from?
All of the commercial. All of the commercial. None of that commercial is currently online. A lot of the industrial is not currently tapped in and online. So it's coming from there.
Okay, 7,000 REUs?
Yeah, plus there's probably some demand being generated from the downtown, assuming that there's going to be
I
additional.
was just wondering how that number, because that's a high number to me.
Can we see that? I mean, it's the
Wasn't that the
data behind
35
that.
plus the 3,000, or the 45 plus the
4,500.
3,000?
Plus,
The
I
future
assume
three.
it's a standard number for commercial space. So if
Right.
you could show us
Sure.
the math, that'd be awesome.
Absolutely. Yep.
Because it's probably not residential, I think, which again is
Right.
Mr. Gordon's fear, is it's going to generate school loads and police loads, whereas commercial and industrial wouldn't. So if we can see that, that'd be great.
In these are worst-case scenarios,
Well, when you say
7,000.
When you say worst-case scenario, there is no worst, best, or most likely. It's simply a number applied to a land use category.
Okay,
A generalized number of REUs per
All right.
acre of land use category. And, we went a little bit further in terms of eliminating land that was, otherwise unbuildable because of wetlands and things like that. So
Okay.
So
Okay,
John, I
so-
interrupted you before you got into the public input.
So, yep, let me go to the next thing, the visual preference survey. Actually, I'm going to let Jacob talk a little bit about our plan for this weekend. His plans for this weekend.
Do we need Mr. Rubel here anymore?
Brian, do you want to miss the rest of this?
I'd like to learn a little bit about it.
Okay.
so-
I just didn't want to have you hold here, so.
But if I leave before the meeting's over, you've got your questions on the table for tonight? Okay. Well, you know where to find me, so.
After you leave, and then
Yeah,
we'll
that-
think of something, yes.
Okay.
Oh, hold on. There we go. Now you can talk. Yeah, it's got to be green. There we go.
All right. Good evening. I'm Jake Van Boxel. I'm a principal planner with McKenna. I've been working on this project for a little while now. In terms of the survey, we will be at the Farmers Market Local Business Expo this weekend. We will be soliciting feedback from the community, engaging them in visual preferences related to the commercial corridor in the overlay district, high-density housing design and the architectural features to those, landscaping, and then parking within the commercial corridors as well to see what the preference is from the community and what they would like to see in the future.
The other thing that we're going to have there is the proposed future land use plan.
Yes.
So we can explain sort of what the changes are from the last future land use plan to this future land use plan. This is more of an informational type session, more of a dialogue, so we're not asking people to vote with dots or anything like that. We're asking them to provide comments. We're going to have sticky notes so they can say, you know, I like this over here, I don't like this over there, I don't like this front-loaded garage house, I like this this commercial development in Canton or whatever, you know. So they can provide us that kind of input more anecdotally rather than any kind of a voting system. And that's going on this weekend, so we're excited about that. Thanks, Jake. The next thing on our agenda is the zoning plan, which is a good segue from what Jake was talking about, in that the reason why we want feedback on the visual preference is the character of the development that we're going to get. We want to know what it's going to look like. We want to know what they expect, what they want to see. You know, we've already addressed the architectural standards, you know, in the past, but I think that can be refined, especially for commercial development and maybe some other types of residential moving forward. That all ties back into amendments to the zoning ordinance. So we've talked a lot about making sure that after the master plan is done, we can hit the ground with zoning and development regulations that align with the master plan. So I've outlined a number of things that we're going to do, sort of a two-tiered approach. So the first thing that we're going to do is align the zoning districts with the new future land use districts, and that's in terms of the density and that sort of thing. So the low-density residential land use zoning district will in the future simply be 2-acre minimum lot size. And you can see that there's no low-density residential, you know, within the sewer district. So any kind of residential development that's shown on this future land use plan is either already developed or not going to be served by sewer. Okay? Then the waterfront residential land use is pretty self-explanatory, but that sort of coincides with the SR2 district, which allows 7,500 square foot lots, the smallest single-family lot sizes the township has. Then the medium density residential would align with the SR1 district, which allows 4 dwelling units per acre. And that's the orange area that's within the sewer district. Okay? And of course, we're going to eliminate the PUD option and also sort of comb through it, the zoning ordinance, to minimize the discretionary development options in order to promote a degree of predictability and alignment with the future land use plan. The next thing we're going to do is revise the Whitmore Lake North Territory overlay. That overlay right now has a pretty significant land use component to it that says that you can do mixed use or not do mixed use. And that really opens up a lot of uncertainty in terms of the future development. So we're going to eliminate the land use aspect of that and focus on, again, the physical characteristics of that intersection and those corridors to make sure they retain their rural character and don't end up looking like, Ford Road or something like that. So we're going to focus on that. Then we're going to obviously update the zoning map again, so there's not land that's zoned inconsistently with the future land use plan. And inevitably, when you dive into an ordinance like that, there's going to be miscellaneous provisions that go throughout the ordinance that we're going to have to address. So we're going to take care of those miscellaneous ones. So all this is sort of the first tier of the process. The second tier is going to be a more comprehensive review of the zoning ordinance, but this is time sensitive. We want to make sure that we address this, get it on the books, so the township isn't confronted with other PUD applications or residential developments or mixed-use developments or anything like that that's really inconsistent and going a different way than the future land use plan. So this is sort of the first prong approach. Finally, in terms of next steps, you can see our aggressive timeline laid out there. Hopefully getting this adopted at a public hearing at the Planning Commission January 22nd, and there's actually going to be a meeting after that at the Township Board for their review and approval. So January 2026, February 2026.
One of the things I wanted to bring up, and we talked about this, well, I did. The slashed portions on this, I don't agree they should be on there.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why, is that I can find two properties that are not correct. And if there's two on there, that means there's more. I don't see that we should be putting on stuff on there that is accurate, not actually factual.
So let me try to take another stab at this. And, I'm not going to die on this hill for sure. If you guys don't want to put it on here, that's fine. But what we are trying to do is to identify areas in the township that were otherwise addressed other than necessarily zoning. So these areas are areas that have been preserved through the land preservation, the township's land preservation program. They may have wetlands on them that are regulated not just by the township but by the state. They may have other natural features on them that are regulated by not just the township but other agencies. So it's really a broad range and does not mean that that property can't be developed.
Well,
it doesn't mean it cannot be developed.
But it to me, when I read this, it implies that. When I'm reading this map, less than 10% developable land.
Well, so I'll
like-
change the label. How about I clarify the designation? But the idea is that it's.
How about we just list it down as wetlands or something along the lines?
Wetlands it's not just wetlands, so it's a series of things.
I mean, yeah, so like you talked about things that are in the land preservation. So that, I think, would be good information, and that's clear and defined. So that'd be useful. I guess I don't know what the other big categories are. So I think, there's a little bit of discomfort that we don't quite understand it. So if we could maybe do 2 or 3, one is the land preservation stuff, because that's a fact, right? I don't know if there's other stuff that's factual, that's not kind of debatable. It might help us. Is that?
Go and just chime in.
Okay. One of the other items I noted, in our zoning map, we have what we call recreational conservation. and there's several areas marked that way. You don't have them marked here on the future land use as
Yep,
as you noted, natural and protected areas. Isn't that what a conservation area is?
so the challenge with that, and we went back and forth on that. I guess we could show that as part of the hatched area, but the problem is, we don't have any plans. This is a future land use plan. So we don't have any plans for going out and identifying any other recreation and conservation areas. That particular zoning district, if someone who currently had a property that was zoned conservation, right now recreation conservation, came in and asked to rezone it to agriculture, there's no way we could say no. There's nothing in our policies or anything that says we're going to go out, for instance, we don't have the northeast quadrant of the township designated as recreation and conservation, and I don't think we want to do that. So it's not a proactive policy. It's a zoning district that exists, that's available to people if they want to do it, and it would not be inconsistent with the policies that we have out in those areas of the township. So that's why we didn't show it on the future land use map.
So, but if the future land use map is ag, and the person wanted to do conservation, recreation, there would be nothing imposing on them to have to do that.
They could do that all day long.
All right.
And vice versa. If they wanted to take it out of that district
Got it,
and
all
put
right.
it into ag, they could.
Okay.
So basically, this is for planning purposes.
Exactly.
Got it. All right.
One last one. You have our park listed as a medium density residential.
Where's that? Which one?
The one right off the lake. At the very top.
Oh, I see. Yep. That'll have to change.
That's, please take that off.
Yep. But part of it is going to be
Part of
preserved
it
for
may
that,
be,
right?
yes,
Yeah,
I understand
so-
that.
And it just got split. You know, we haven't even split it yet today, so I'll try to make it reflect, what we're talking about here.
So it's for future.
So that'll knock that 7,009 REUs down to 6,981-ish.
Okay. Mr. Kennedy.
So, the next steps, it looks like we're going to see you guys in a month, but I think this question of what's behind that, what was 7,009 is now a slightly lower number. If you could provide that.
Sure.
For the next meeting.
Absolutely.
That'd be great, because I think that's really important for us to understand where is this going and what kind of stuff is it generating.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Mr. Gordon?
Mr. Jackson, when I'm looking at the map, at North Territorial on the far right-hand side where it's purple, and then there's that one little block there that's brown, medium-density residential with a village center at the top.
Commercial at the top.
Commercial at the top, okay.
Yeah, we wouldn't put Village Center out there.
When I look at the 2019 future land use map, that's listed as low-density residential, and now it's medium-density residential. What happened
I
there?
think the lot sizes align more with the medium-density residential than the 2-acre minimum lot size.
Is this,
It's already, you can see it's already split there.
so this is already been done?
Basically existing conditions, yeah.
Oh, it's an existing, all right, it's an
mirroring the
existing condition.
condition.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
The expo at the farmer's market, when I go to the township website and I look at the front page and the news articles that are listed, it says 2025 Local Business Expo. But unless you click on that, you don't have any idea that there's anything with the master plan going on there. And we're trying to let the public know that they can participate in this review of the master plan. So maybe we can do something at the township level to highlight that.
Great idea.
There should be a separate post going out from the township.
And on social media stuff.
And you said we were going to involve the public. When do we get to ask them whether they're interested in adding another 11,000 people to the community or $30 million in sewer expansion? When do we propose that number? Because that's That's very much involved in the future land use map.
So there's two opportunities for that. One is the 63-day review period, as I mentioned last time. I think it's important to get the word out for the residents to look at, not that issue alone.
Right.
Not that issue. I would not suggest that we put something on the township's website that says, are you in favor of $1,100 or $30 million tax-funded improvement to the township? I would advise against that. I would ask them to look at the master plan, the land use, the land use policies, the visual preference results, you know, all of the aspects of the plan and weigh in if that's consistent with the way they see the township developing.
So they would have no idea that, unless they've been watching these meetings, that in fact, when they look at this,
This will be in there. We have a section, as you know, on public facilities. And we are going to expand that to include the discussion about the sewer district.
great.
It discussed the sewer district in the past, and now we're going to expand on that to address the conversation that the township's been having about it, and explain what the scenarios are and, you know, how we got to where we are right now.
Right, because I've watched these 4 projects get approved, and many of them were, the discussion was, well, we kind of have to approve it because it's in the future land use map, or, you know, it's been envisioned as that. So it's quite important, an important document in terms of locking this community in for at least the next 5 years to potential development and where it could happen. Thank you.
Mrs. Chick.
I think that as far as putting out anything regarding any expansion or cost related to the wastewater treatment plant would be something that the board, number one, needs to discuss if they even want to do it before we put anything out to the public that we're considering, because we aren't even talking about it, yeah.
So that's a great point. And, you know, I outlined the process moving forward. You can see that once the Planning Commission has an acceptable draft of the policies and the land use plan and so forth, then it goes to the township board for them to review before that plan gets distributed for the 63-day review period. So township board can take a look at it, and the plan will be accompanied, when it goes to the township board, with a cover memo. So we can direct the township board, request the township board pay particular attention, give input on any specific areas that we want. I think by that time, they'll know what to expect. There won't be any surprises, but we can always say, please, you know, take a look at this before it goes out.
And as I said, that we don't know if all these plans, proposed plans, are going to come to fruition. I mean, right now, there's one of the people that, you know, we did an approval on, or preliminary approval, doesn't want to end up going along with expanding the lines like we're requesting. So, I mean, that may end up being something that, you know, eventually is the deal breaker. That's what I'm saying. We don't know. That's why putting out there that the township may be expanding this wastewater treatment plant, that's not true. It's not accurate at this point. It's just a discussion that if certain things happen, that's what's going to have to happen. Well, it's, yeah, right, yeah, right. Okay, great. Any other questions? Are we all okay with the next steps? It seem reasonable to everybody? We good? All right. That was a good discussion. Okay, there is no new business. Does anybody see any issues with the minutes from the last meeting? Any? All right. I move to approve the minutes from the September 3rd, 2025 meeting and dispense with the reading.
Support.
Motion by Stanilaicho, support by Zarzeki. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All right. Final call to the public. Yes, sir. Please state your name and address, and you have to turn the mic on. Okay. Thank you.
Elmer Bissler, 5301 Pontiac Trail. I just wanted to let the board know that the township did send out something Local Business Expo Sunday, September 21st. It says, anyone interested in providing input towards Northfield Township 2025 master plan is encouraged to stop by on Sunday.
Oh,
So there is a
great.
email out
okay.
to the public. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Comments from commissioners? Mr. Gordon?
I did have a question that I've been kicking around since a couple of meetings ago when I brought up the idea of the costs involved with residential development versus the benefits. And both the chair and John Jackson, our planner, said the benefit of the residential development is more people. So the question in my mind is, what's too many people? What's the right number of people? And how do you figure that out? Because if you can't just simply say more is better, because it doesn't help us in terms of planning. We're talking about if these 4 projects come through at 1,119 REUs, 2,800 people, we go from 8,500 to 11,300. There are some metrics in the planning community where it says a rural community has fewer than 10,000 people. So I guess are we going from rural to something else just by doing these last 4 projects? But I think it's not something that you need to answer tonight, but it's something to think about. And for all of us to think about is what is the right vision for the community? What do we want to look like in 20 years? Because I know people that live in Southfield that have moved out here and said, this is what Southfield used to look like when I was a kid. And now it's that. And that's why I'm here. So I think it's worth talking about.
I think that's why we're doing this. This is going to address a lot of the questions that you are bringing up, because a lot of this is going to change the ability to actually bring in large amounts of people. Once we get this going here, it's going to end up changing that whole dynamic. So I don't know what the number is, but I think you're going to see a significant decrease, and you're not going to see the large number of people being able to come into our community like we're currently dealing with.
Well, we are looking at a 30% jump in the next 5 years if these projects go through.
Right, well, those are already done. The only thing we can do is try and change the future.
Well,
And that's what we're doing with this,
yeah, I agree. I hope we
at
can.
least for 5 years.
And hopefully the PUD will allow us to maybe reduce the number of units that are coming in at the same time. So that was a question that I wanted to bring up. And, it seemed we talk about improving downtown a lot, but in the last 4 years, there's been planning about downtown, but all the approvals have been out of town, in an area where very few people have any confidence that the residents moving into North Territorial are going to be shopping downtown or interacting with downtown. So it's not, we may have a vision of helping downtown, but we're not doing the things that are actually going to be able to help downtown. And I'd like that to change somehow. That's all the comments I had.
Mr. Thomas? No comments. Ms. Gannon? Is that right? Gannon? No? Ms. Chick?
Yep, I just had one thing to add and that I forgot to leave out of my report from our last manager's report, that we have been in the process of looking for a building official, and we are still looking.
Okay. Mr. Kennedy?
So when I asked you for the next meeting, if we could have that 7,009 slightly lower, if you could also do some math on people, all right, in terms of population, and, again, based on planning estimates.
right, yep.
That would be, very useful number, I think, for us to look at, because I think it's going to be a much lower number than maybe, because most of that's doesn't appear to be residential, and that would be very helpful for us to see. Kind of becomes the worst-case people number that we look at, and that's a good number to look at, understand. Thank you.
Send to Mr. Jackson, I just done a little bit of Google work that I did, some of the metrics that we're looking to pull together, or I can send it to the chair and we can see how we can maybe find a lot of those stats right here in the township in terms of a baseline data sheet.
Okay, is that all? Okay. Mr. Zarzeki? All right, I want to finish our meeting. As I always do, I want to make sure we keep our men and women in uniform in our thoughts and prayers. Their sacrifice is what's allowing us to have our freedom of discussion and our freedoms. So, and with that, make the announcement for the next meeting, which is going to be October 1st, 2025, and I move to adjourn.
I support.
Motion by Stanalacho, support by Chick. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All right, thank you. Motion carries.